First up is Rob O'Donnell, who's Director of Publishing Technologies at Rockefeller University Press. And he oversees all workflow-related issues at RUP. One of his main responsibilities is just keeping abreast of all of this and making sure it can all work. And one of the things, been working with Rob for about 20 years now, and one of the things I love about working with Rob is he always wants to be out there, at least at the leading edge, sometimes pushing over into the bleeding edge. So he's going to give you part one, and then we'll follow with Jenny on what it's like living at the bleeding edge of this and what you need to think about if you raised your hand a moment ago as I want to implement this. So, Rob?
Okay, so as Bruce said, I'm from Rockefeller University Press. We're a small biomedical publisher. We publish 3 journals: Journal of Cell Biology, Journal of Experimental Medicine, and the Journal of General Physiology. We publish about 550 articles per year. Our authors retain copyright, and we publish under a CC BY-NC license. All of our research is freely available after 6 months on Highwire and PMC, and we've got about a 20% acceptance rate across all 3 of our journals, the lowest being 9%. Before I start talking about workflows, just some notes on our productions. We are a small department. We have no in-house developers, so we rely heavily on our technology partners. We use eJournal Press for submission and production systems. Our copy editing and XML tagging is done in Word via Xtiles, and our automated composition and HTML proofing is done via Sheridan's Article Express. So why do we care about persistent identifiers? It's probably a silly question, especially after listening to all of the other speakers, but just to touch on this for a second, our publishing process is very much about customer service to our authors. We're trying to help them every step of the way and do everything we can for them. With funder mandates, this is a service that we're trying to help them with. And we think by tagging funding data, we are providing transparency and accuracy in their acknowledgement of their funding sources. Also, with cross-ref auto update, as Chuck mentioned, it's easy to provide the service. If we're depositing Orchid IDs with our DOIs, those records get updated automatically with the author's latest publication information. And this is similar to what Chuck had up before. Integration of persistent identifiers across platforms really does open up possibility for discovery, new paths. They all link together, and all of those paths come back to the article. Of course, as a publisher, that's traffic, and that helps us, as well as the author. And then finally, we are a Chorus member, and funding data is a requirement of Chorus. So real quickly, why are we a Chorus member? Well, Chorus simplifies the compliance process for authors. It allows us as a publisher to ensure compliance, and it allows funders to monitor their compliance. I think this little screenshot of a slide I stole from David Crotty nicely illustrates the need for Chorus. 764 access policies to track, that's a lot, and Chorus provides a central system so that publishers, authors, and funders can all track that. In fact, we are fully compliant with all of the mandates of the funders that support our research. We make everything free after 6 months under a CC BY-NC license. We do deposit to PMC. But the problem is funders don't actually know that we're compliant unless they have a way to monitor that. And we were initially hesitant to join Chorus because we assumed that most of our funding was coming from NIH, and we do deposit to PMC. But as we dug a little deeper, we realized it's more diverse than we thought. It is still mostly NIH, but there are other agencies there, and they don't particularly always allow PMC to satisfy their requirements. So, a little bit about our workflow. And before I start this, I will say that some of you probably have been doing this much longer than us and have some more sophisticated workflows, but I want to give you the perspective of one small publisher. So when we started out, we assumed that we would collect data from the authors on submission, as Chuck was just showing, using what was then called, I guess still called, the FundRef widget.
It's still called that.
So we installed it on our test submission sites and started playing around with it. And what we realized was that it wasn't as straightforward as it seemed like it might be. As you can see here, I started typing in National Sci, thinking I'd get National Science Foundation, and it doesn't appear anywhere in the list. So we started realizing that this was going to be a burden on our authors, and we're very much about making the submission process very easy, especially with our low acceptance rates. So we decided that we could not use this. We were not going to rely on submission by the author. And the reasons are, as I just said, burden on submitting authors. We accept format-neutral submissions. We try to make the process very easy. We didn't want to add the hoop. Most of our papers won't be accepted, as low as 9% acceptance rates. Everyone else would be wasting their time. It requires the submitting author to have the information for all authors at their fingertips at the time of submission. They probably don't have that, and in fact, a lot of times the submitting author is not an author at all, but a postdoc or an admin. In fact, it is already included acknowledgments for just about every paper that is submitted to us. So they have collected this information through the process, and why duplicate efforts if we have it already? And if we are collecting it at submission and we have this information, the acknowledgments, well, now we've got two sets of data and they have to be reconciled. I think you'll hear in a little while that OSA has a really elegant way of dealing with this. But from our point of view, if we don't collect it at submission, there's nothing to reconcile. And finally, when we got started on this, a lot of publishers I talked to were citing very high error or correction rates. In one case, it was as high as 30%. So we decided that we would mine acknowledgments for funding data. We talked to some of our technology partners. We were looking for automated tools to do this. They don't exist. In order to build them, it would be prohibitively expensive. So we decided to go ahead. We just wanted to get started. We knew this had to get out there. The longer we wait, the harder it's going to be to catch up. We decided to start manually mining acknowledgments. Sounds crazy, but there actually are some benefits. Our copy editors are doing this. Our copy editors deal with every other piece of data in the manuscript, so why not this? They know how to deal with XML. They know how to tag, so we decided we'd give it a try. They weren't very happy about it at first, to be honest, but after a few manuscripts, they said it's easy, it takes less than 5 minutes on average, and it's going pretty well, actually. So they're tagging in the Word file as they're copy editing, and it is available for JATS export. We export our JATS via XStyles from Word, and the metadata, the funding data metadata is built from what has been tagged in the acknowledgments. And as I said, no need to reconcile with submitted data. So just to really quickly to go through what the tagging process is, the copy editor checks out the acknowledgments, reads through them, identifies and normalizes funder names. Then they're actually manually querying the Crossref API to get the ID. Now, this is a really terrible part of workflow, but they are copying and pasting from that result, which obviously is not good. And then from there, as I said, we export JATS via XStyles, and our funding data is there, ready to go to Highwire, then to Crossref. As I said, we use Sheridan's Article Express for our automated composition and proofing. We take that metadata, we present it to the author in a semi-structured form here, and we have tools available to update the metadata, add new funders. What's mostly happening, we're finding, is that authors are adding grant numbers at this point, which I think is a very good thing. So the results, according to Crossref, we don't have any DOIs that have tagged names without funder IDs, which is the problem Chuck was talking about before. So I think that's a good thing. We haven't yet had any corrections post-publication, also good, not to say that they won't come. And our data is being populated where expected. So here you can see our crossmark widget, and here's our course dashboard. Not a lot of information in there yet, but we have gotten started, and I think that's what's most important at this point. Now, as I said, the copying and the pasting of the ID and doing this whole process manually is not ideal, and it's nothing that we want to live with long term. What we really need, we've proved to ourselves that mining acknowledgments is working for us, but we really like automation. Building such a tool, as I mentioned, was cost prohibitive. A single publisher, well, a single small publisher certainly couldn't do it. Even if large publishers wanted to do it, duplicated effort across publishers would be kind of silly. I think what we need really is a mining tool that could be used by everyone. Go from this to this with a single click. Now, I'm going to step out of reality for a second and just talk about what I would like to see. In November, I referred to this as FundFix, but in keeping with Crossref's mission to name everything as it's called, I changed it to Open Funder Registry Query and Repair Tool. So in its simplest form, this could be a web interface. that is available to anyone. And it allows the user to insert a funder name and grant numbers, and it would return structured JATs. To take it a step farther, just take a block of text, acknowledgments, paste it in there, same results. And how it would work, how I see it working, would be to use pattern recognition to identify possible funder names acknowledgments, and then probably have a list of auto recognition of common names that would just be corrected outright. And then we'd need some really excellent fuzzy matching on entries in the open funder registry, which is the hard part. But if it could happen, there are a number of returns from this API that I could imagine. First, if it's an exact match, well, then you tag and you're done, and there's nothing left to do. If it's a partial match, well, maybe the tool could make an educated guess on the closest name and, of course, alert the user. So this could not be completely automated. There's no way that could happen. But if a copy editor is running it, they can certainly take that information and make some fixes and rerun. If there's no match, well, then there's the alert. If the tool has identified this looks like a funder name, but there is no match, then let the copy editor know that as well. To take it a step further, we could do ORD IDs. Based on regular expressions, we could find what looks like an ID, try to match it up with the funder name, tag it appropriately, and if there are no award IDs that look like they match a funder name, well then query that as well, and hopefully we'll get some better information. Now, beyond the web interface, I think what would be really nice is to have integration with XML-based editing, proofing, and authoring tools. We've got a bunch of really great tools in our space now, and I just think it would be amazing if they could all share a single service to get this done. I think it would be a huge step forward in getting more tagged funding data. Can it be a reality? I don't know. There are some there exists some similar functionality out there. XTiles itself has excellent reference processing and tagging. It auto-corrects against PMC and Crossref. It can also identify accession numbers and tag those and link them to databases. Digital Sciences Grid Disambiguator, I just came across recently. This just allows you to copy and paste a block of affiliations text into a field similar to what I showed, and it will return disambiguated institution names and geographic locations with IDs. Authenticate, of course, compares blocks of manuscript text against Crossref's similarity check to find similar text. It's used by many publishers and many submission systems, single system, similar to what I'm proposing. And Crossref Simple Text Query uses pasted references to locate and return DOIs. I think this is an interesting one because it's a tool that Crossref built to further its own mission. Who could do this? Well, funders are the ones pushing compliance, so it would be great if they could pay for it, but I don't know if that's really feasible. Crossref is managing the open funder registry and managing the tagged funding data. They have a huge stake in it. Maybe it could happen there. And I think all of us as publishers have a stake in it. Maybe we could get together Kickstarter style and fund something like this. I don't have an answer. I'm really just throwing this out there. I think that we should start a conversation about this, and I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on it. Step back to reality for a second, and just last slide on Orchid, just to talk a little about Orchid. We collect Orchid IDs through eJournal Press's authenticated API transfer. So what this means is, or during submission, they're asked to provide their Orchid. They're sent to the Orchid site where they log in, and the API is the ID is transferred via API back to EJP. It's never touched. It actually cannot be edited by anyone in the system. It's really nice, so it remains valid. We've been doing this for about 18 months, but we have not had a production workflow because we lacked a valid production workflow, and we didn't think it was worth the risk to introduce a workflow that could introduce errors and tag the wrong names at the wrong ID, et cetera. And frankly, it seemed like inclusion wasn't urgent because all we could really do was display it in the article. But once Crossref's auto update came along, that changed everything, and I think it's critical now for everyone. The fact that we could include an ID in our metadata and that the author's Orchid record will get updated upon publication is just, it's sort of magical. I'm happy to report that we now do have a valid workflow, thanks to XTiles. And how it works is we export an XML metadata, JATS metadata file from EJP that's got the valid tags that we collected on submission. There's a series of checks of, that metadata file is imported directly into Word via Xtiles, and there's a series of checks of the names in the metadata file against the author list in the Word file. If there's any failure, the process just stops because we don't want to risk inserting false IDs. But as long as everything matches, the IDs are tagged and assigned to each author, and again, they're not editable, they remain valid, and on export to JATS, they're properly tagged and ready to go. And I'm also happy to report that as of last week, we became the 18th signatory of the Crossref's Orchid's open letter requiring corresponding authors to have ID, and we will probably move at some point in the future to requiring all authors to have them. And that's all.